welcome to worldofdroneseducation.com's ongoing webinar series. And I'm really excited for the conversation today because we're talking about how you can move between industries using emerging technologies. And this is something I think is going to become more and more frequent for all of us as we move forward. So here we are talking about how drones can be used in the media and whether or not you've become like a drone pilot in the media, or you work in the media and want to become a drone pilot, or you're involved in production and you've seen how new technologies are affecting how production is being made. So we're going to have a chat with some very interesting people today, and I'm really grateful for these women to have spent their time with us. Now, this has been a Women in Media event that was created, but purely by accident, because quite frankly, I thought of the 4 best people that I knew to take part in this, and we all just so happen in my conscious bias way to all be women. So I thought that's wonderful, wonderful twist of fate. And today we have joining us from truly global population. We're starting over first thing in the morning there in beautiful Britain. We've got Caris, who's also known as the Drone Lass on Twitter, who works as a shooting producer and director at the BBC, amongst other channels, as an independent producer. We've got Elena down in California. So we're doing the evening, where's your margarita, Elena? This cocktail hour at 10 o'clock at night in California, is it not? And Elena is the founder of Women Who Drone, and also is a certified drone pilot, and is producing some wonderful instructional videos across the Women Who Drone YouTube channel at the moment, as well as other social media, with over 42,000 followers on Instagram, which is something to be envied for someone like me who's trying to figure out how to get social media following. You're a goddess amongst mortals here in terms of your social media account there, Elena. We've got the wonderful Jen here as well, Queenslander, fresh from a quarry load of surveys the last few days, who's also a commercial photographer and video producer operating in the defence, aviation, manufacturing and heavy industry sectors, and also incredibly well-renowned throughout the industry as being a very cutting-edge person that's done some unique pieces of work. So I'm very grateful to have your time here today, Jen. And last but definitely not least is the wonderful Tracy, who is now the Chief Content Officer for both Emmy and BAFTA award-winning film and television production company Hoodlum, who also produced a couple of my favourite things. But when Tracy was also CEO at Screen Queensland, helped support the production of Bluey, and purely for that, you're a goddess amongst mortals for that as well, Tracy. I'm sure many parents would like to shake your hands or at least do a COVID wave at you to thank you for being part of the production of Bluey. So thank you for making my life better through a blue heeler cartoon dog and her sister. And without further ado, what we're going to do is crack on. And each of our speakers today are going to be asked to do about a 5 to 10 minute rundown of their story or the things that they're seeing in the industry. Towards the end, we'll get through some of the Q&A. And then we'll have a thanks and a close and a comment. And just thank you again for everyone for your time today. And so I will pass the microphone in like a Brady Bunch weirdness style, sort of across and to the left there, down to Caris in the UK. So Caris, you've got 5 to 10 minutes to tell us your story and your adventures in drones and media.
Right, well, it'll probably be about 5 minutes because I'm just waking up. I look great, but because I've had a shower and washed my hair, and it's exciting to get invited on this call. So yeah, I started. I've been making films for about 18 years. And when I say making films, some of them were very bad, and I didn't do media at university or college. What happened was I fell into it. It was something that I really fancied doing. But then it took me a long time to get going. And then what I was doing a proper job and sort of freelancing on the side, and then during holidays and at weekends. And I joined a production company and then started he trained me. He was ex-BBC and he trained me in everything you can imagine, all about scripting and how you shoot things. And I was just like, this is it. This is really, really where I want to be. But it took me a while to get there. And then I even became a wedding filmmaker, and it's one of the hardest jobs that you can imagine. And then from there, I started making films in schools and training children to use cameras. And then I started doing a bit of corporate stuff on my own. And then I had a bit of a life change and I needed a job, and I was looking around and there was one in the camera department at the BBC. And basically you're prepping all the kit, it goes out on a shoot, it comes back, you clean it, you put it back on the shelf. And it wasn't very exciting, but at the time it was just the job that I needed to do. And so basically from there, I managed to get on a lot of shoots because weirdly, I knew a lot of people in the BBC. And they were like, oh, what are you doing here? And I was like, oh, well, I'm working in the camera department. And they were like, oh, and I was going, any chance I can get on a shoot? Because you were allowed to go out to basically share your knowledge with the kit and troubleshoot. Basically, when other people were filming, you were fixing things for them. And I did that. And while I was sat there, a couple of people come in and talk about what production they were doing, and they were saying, oh, we're using drones. And I was like, oh, drones, right. So I Googled drone and I popped, and there was some shaky footage, but there was this camera flying, and I thought, that's what I want to do. I really want to do that. But at that time, there was nothing affordable. There was just no affordable kit out there. It was just, basically, it was a massive drone, or it was the DJI Phantom 1. And everybody remembers that one as being really shaky and a bit rocky. And I couldn't really afford the DJI one. It was just out of my reach. And that is basically, you know, sometimes you think, I really want to do that, but you just can't afford to do it. And then I noticed that there were 2 women doing it, and I was like, wow, women are doing it as well. And they were called the Helicopter Girls, and they're still around. And I'm sort of friendly across social media with them, and they've got the most amazing catalogue. But they were in at the beginning. They were already working in TV as producers and directors, and then, you know, bought a big rig. Anyway, I just sat there watching their show reel over and over, still dreaming of being a drone pilot. And then this guy came in, and he was working in BBC Children's, and he said, oh, I'm doing my drone licence. So, how can you tell me about it? It's really complicated. You couldn't do it. So not only as being a woman feeling a bit patronised, if anybody tells me I can't do something, then I make it a mission to go and do it. And then I'm still working in the camera department, not enough money, but then I got promoted. And I moved out of there and into a different department where they were doing filmmaking. And the uplift in my salary wasn't very much, but it was enough to A, get a credit card, B, get a drone and get on the training. And that was about just over 5 years ago. And I haven't really looked back from there. So the way I see it is that it took me then, after I'd qualified, another 12 months before, even though I was in the industry, for people to take me seriously as a drone pilot, people just weren't. And I don't think it helped the fact that I'd given myself a social media, the drone lass, and started a blog. And basically I started the blog because I thought nobody anywhere is sharing this information about how did they get qualified, how did they get a drone, and how did they get airborne, and then how did you get next job, and how do you price a job? Because I get asked those questions a lot of the time about how do you get into the industry. And what I would say is that you need to be really tenacious, friendly, and deliver what you're going to deliver. Now, what I say is that if you're a woman trying to get into the industry, you have to work 10 times harder than the men, and you have to be good, because otherwise people go, no, it's because she's a girl. And they do still do that. It is really, I suppose I'm doing this because it is a woman into drones, into production, that I'm sharing my story, that there is still a little bit of a rub. I mean, the first job that I got booked was by a man, and he trusted me, and it was a really mouth-watering, heart-stopping job in the fact that I had to fly a drone over a chemical plant. And basically the safety officer said, if that drone falls out of the sky, you will take the whole of Durham out, which is a small town in the north. So, yeah, that was a little bit worrying. And then he got the footage and he gave me critique about the shots that I'd done, which was the best thing that anybody could have done. Because sometimes what people will do is directors, because I TV direct, and you'll get stuff from people and you won't give them feedback. You won't say, when you shot this interview, or when you did this, or when you did that, if you do this, these are the shots that I will use. I won't use those shots. And so if you don't edit, you don't learn that. So I do all of it. I do, and that sounds really arrogant. It's just that I've been this is my industry and this is what I love doing, and I love all aspects. And so that's basically my journey. And so now I fly the drone when it's, when we've not got this strange time that we're in. I fly for BBC Breakfast and I fly live on TV. And who would have thought that ever I would have the confidence to, you set that drone going and you've got comms in your ear from the studio saying, if you could just show us more of this, ferry, or you want to show us more of this farmland, or can you show us, these children near this forest, but don't go near these children, but could you get a bit closer? And then you're just flying and you're getting instructions, which sometimes I don't want to tell these directors in the studio too much, but sometimes they ignore them for safety reasons. That's my excuse anyway. So that's basically my journey, and I'm still plugging away at getting as many women as possible. And I know Elena, who's coming up next through Women Who Drone, which is a great online platform, very supportive, and actively we sort of all trying in our own countries and globally to encourage as many women as possible to get flying and get those jobs. But be tenacious. Keep putting together a really good show reel. And what I would do is watch loads and loads of drone footage, and you'll start to see what's good and things that really appeal to you as a filmmaker if you make films. And if you don't, then, look at what people are doing that's really good and emulate that, and then cut it together. And then you've got a show reel. Don't make your show reel more than sort of like a minute and a half, because nobody will watch it. So there you go. That's that.
Thank you, Karis. You can take breath now, mate. Hero of mine is Karis. Love it. Moving swiftly on to Elena. Elena, would you like to give us a rundown of how you got into drones and what that had to do with the media and where you are now?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, hello, everybody, and thanks for having me. And Karis, your story was super inspiring, and I can relate to a number of the things that you just spoke about. So I'll probably include some similar things in my story. But my media career started, that's what I studied. I graduated in 2011, which is crazy to say right now. And I actually started off in education. I was teaching middle schoolers and high schoolers, and sometimes kids in grade school, about production, just how to create a story with a camera. So for anything from pre-production to storyboarding, scripting, all the way to shooting, all the way to editing. And I started with also teaching Girl Scouts at summer camps when I was in college. When I graduated, I was offered a job at a TV entertainment group in San Diego, California. They're actually still based here. And it was, I was offered to do my own travel show, which was like a dream come true. So I got to travel the world for a year producing content, TV shows, 30 minutes to 1 hour segments about luxury. And this is kind of crazy to say this now, but it was basically about luxury lifestyle. So we get to, I don't know if anybody's seen Cribs here, but we got to tour some multi-million-dollar homes and castles, and we just got to show everybody what these places look like. I think that job really sort of kickstarted the understanding of every position in production. While I was very familiar with shooting, very familiar with editing, I was also on camera as the TV host. So I was not only wearing a number of hats, but including hosting and sometimes shooting, offline editing, and producing. It really helped me to understand how to become a good director when you understand how to do every single one of those roles. So from there, I was also a full-time video editor, just shooting and producing, believe it or not, like cooking shows. So I kind of have like gone all over the place. But if you're familiar with those short form how-to tasty videos, that was my job, including my hands actually making the food. So I kind of jumped to various roles. After my couple of years of creating over 300 cooking videos for social media, I moved to San Francisco. As you mentioned, Catherine, I'm in San Diego right now, but this is where I was born and raised. Normally, I'm based in New York. I left San Diego 3 years ago, and I moved to San Francisco to work for a company where I was producing online courses that focus on education to empower women through creativity. So you could think of many different subjects that we've done, from photography to videography, training people how to use those skills and develop them, but also calligraphy or typography. So that was really great. I was directing and producing mostly a crew and a team that was at that organization. And then I moved to New York in 2017. And that was really the start of my drone journey. So in my media career, I learned every hat. And then I was, in 2017, I wanted to hike the Great Wall of China. It was something I've always wanted to do since I was a little girl. And of course, as a professional video producer, I knew I was going to document this experience. So I started looking up some content of, people at the Great Wall of China, and then I came across some drone content. And that is what really mesmerized me. So I decided the next day I would buy my first drone. And at first I purchased the GoPro Karma, if any of you are familiar with that one. And it was recommended to me by a friend who I was working with at the time. And I remember I got that drone, I picked it up at Best Buy, and I went to the park with a couple friends to go fly it, and it actually crashed. And of course, I'm like, oh my God, it was me because I'm a beginner. But, it turned out that it lost connection. Drone just it didn't hurt anybody. It just crashed into the grass. And there was a guy nearby me who was actually flying a Mavic Pro. And I saw him flying his drone. And I was like, what kind of drone is that? And he told me, and then he landed it and he put it into a little bag, and I saw how compact it was. And I realized, wow, the one that I have is way too bulky to take to the Great Wall of China. I have to go check this out. So I returned my drone. Next day, went and bought a Mavic Pro, flew it, got used to it. Within a couple weeks, I was on my way to the Great Wall. So I did my hike. I captured some incredible content. I fell in love with what I saw. I kept flying. And then that same year, I had a number of people reaching out to me, asking me if I could do some drone work for them. And then also I had women reaching out to me, how they should get started, what are you using, just all kinds of questions about the content I was posting on social media. So I did first, I went and studied for my Part 107 because I found out after doing research that I couldn't actually do work legally for anybody unless I was certified. So I studied, passed my Part 107, while simultaneously building Women Who Drone, which I came up with a girlfriend at the time who I was telling her this story, have all these women reaching out to me, asking me questions. And I'm like, I don't have all the answers. There must be other people who are trying to connect with each other. And then I think at the time it was less than 5% of women who were certified drone pilots in the US. And that sort of, it was shocking, but at the same time, you're like, okay, well, if you think about it, 1% of, I think it's 200,000 people in the US are pilots, and 1% of those are women, or that's 1% of the population in the US. So, it's, I guess in aviation, generally speaking, it's pretty low ratios when it comes to diversity. But at the same time, I thought this is a new technology, and this is a technology that could be used for creativity, but also for a number of other things. But because I'm coming from the media industry, I knew that this was not just, something that women didn't do, but it was a new tool for producers, for video people, for content creators. And so I then decided to create Women Who Drone, which is in October of 2017. It really just started with the Instagram and just highlighting women's content and creating the Women Who Drone hashtag, which 0 people used at the time that we created it. And now we have over, I think it's at this point, over 40,000 tags. And so we soon realized that it wasn't that women weren't flying, they just didn't really know how to connect with each other. And then that's when we started our Facebook group, our workshops, our lessons. And now here we are doing virtual lessons and talking to each other today. And that's the gist of it.
Yep, you've got to start it if you see an opportunity. So well done, Elena. You really have made a mark. And yeah, the Women Who Drone brand is growing stronger and more global as we go. So on ya, as we say in Australia. Well done. Good efforts. And please don't stop, because I think we've still got a long way to go. Okay, so next upon the list is our Jen. So I'm going to just mute you there, Elena. And Jen, are you good to go? Tell us yourself in a nutshell.
In a nutshell, well, I'm an industrial photographer and video producer. That means that I specialise in working with defence or companies that contract to defence, or people who run quarries, or who build buildings, or who have anything to do with a piece of machinery that could kill you, essentially. The pitch that I give people, or the way that I describe what I do, is if it involves national security, or if someone could get seriously injured or die on site, they're the kind of jobs the kind of clients that I work with. So the way that I use drones in my industry is to do things that's unsafe for a human to do. So we might do things where you can't get close enough to a particular piece of vegetation, or you're on a secure site or whatever it is, and you can't or don't want to send a human being in there, or you just want to get a different view of something that you only see from the ground. They're probably the two main ways that I use drones. And I have some sort of tangential stuff where you might do some vegetation mapping to see what weeds are happening on a quarry, but that's pretty boring. But some people love weeds. But I think one of the things that I, picking up on what both Tracy and Elena said, was that I just started because I saw something else. And I really liked it, and I thought, well, I want to try and put that into my business. And I think, as a photographer and a video producer in today's day and age, you can't really afford to not offer a drone services as part of your deal. So I just saw it, liked it, thought I can do that. And Australia, we operate in quite a heavy legislative environment here in Australia. So if you want to do anything commercially, you've got to be licensed. You've got to pay a lot of money to CASA, which is our regulatory body, and you've got to you've just got to comply with everything. So it's really complex legislation that you have to navigate in Australia, and I would argue that at times it sort of hurts our ability to do things well, but it's there for safety reasons. So we do have to balance that. There's a couple of questions that were in the things that people have sent through. How do you get started? How do you, how much will someone pay me to be a drone pilot? Like, really, the industry is so new that if you want to be a drone pilot, you've got to start yourself. You've got to start yourself somewhere. You've got to pick a topic that you're interested in. You've got to start filming. You've got to start, there's so many drones on the market now that are old secondhand ones that, people like me have crashed into quarries. They're still working perfectly well. But, the level of entry, the cost of entry is so low compared to where it was when we all started that you really can get some good cheap secondhand drones now. Or if you can't afford to do that, partner with somebody else. So I know for myself that I get 20 or 30 men a year going, I'm a great this, I'm a great that, hire me to do this job that you do with, Army Aviation. And I go, great. And I might get one woman every 5 years contacting me asking if they want to do that. So if you're a woman and you see other women doing it, reach out to us, because we will absolutely prioritize you over men because we get so many men. So if you're a woman, reach out. I promise you we're not going to say no. And if we can't do it right now, we're probably going to be able to connect you with someone who can. So I just encourage women who are thinking about it, just please reach out, because there was nobody when we started and we had to break the mold ourselves, but we're more than happy to bring people along now that we've kind of got a bit of a lead. So that's what I would say.
Thanks, Jen. Closed nutshell. Fantastic. Tracy, we'll move to you now. Tracy, we're so glad that you joined us today, because we could sit here as drone service providers and wax lyrical, but what we actually want is work and contracts and to understand what it is that the production industry is needing. So I'm really interested to hand the mic to you just to hear how things have been, how things are going, and what opportunities you see for women who can fly drones. I'm just going to unmute you here if you haven't unmuted yourself. I'm going to say, there we go. Please give us the wealth of knowledge and the gateway to future opportunities.
Yes, so I am not a drone operator, but I am a hirer of people who have that skill set. So I work for a company called Hoodlum, who have been around for over 20 years. And I guess my introduction to drones was really back in 2014. And that was during a feature film called Pirates of the Caribbean, Dead Men Tell No Tales. And it was a project that I brought to Australia when I was the CEO of Screen Queensland. So essentially, it was pretty early days in terms of drones being used on film and television sets. And we brought this company in just to demonstrate what they thought they could do. And the directors, there was two directors, and they absolutely loved this sort of demonstration. And so they ended up booking them just to do a couple of short scenes. And that quickly morphed into the drone team having a much bigger role. And it really saw them not only come onto set and do things like fly the drones with the camera on it through the ships that were used in the film, but also allowed them to develop their technology and build a new drone, which enabled them to get new angles and shots that had never really been done before. So that was 2014. Now we are here in 2020, and at Hoodlum, we actually use drones on every single production. We're currently working on our third season of a show called Harrow for the ABC, which is a procedural drama series, and we're also in production on our second season of a show called Five Bedrooms, which is a relationship drama, so completely different kinds of shows. And in 2018, we also did a show called Tidelands, which was Australia's very first original series commissioned by Netflix. And every single one of those used drones in a whole different variety of ways. Now, the reason we use them and are so interested in this for our business is that technology and new technology in our industry is always in demand. And we're an industry where the costs are always going up. So the fact that drones have saved us money and probably the most important thing is their solutions to problems that we have. And so that's why they've made such a quick mark in our industry and why we at Hoodlum are really interested in continued use and continued development of the technology. So whether it's mapping locations for utilising and 3D scanning, that can be used for us in terms of visual effects or animation, whether it's filming actors in motion to get realistic movements for animation, which is normally done on multiple cameras. So drone operators for us have been finding new ways to transform processes. And that means efficiency, it means safety, flexibility, cost reduction, as I mentioned, but also simplifying ways to get the outcome that we actually need. I was trying to think of an example to give you, and I thought about an animated film, and one of the things that's really time consuming is trying to get figures that look realistic in animation, because animation these days actually almost looks like real life. So for the figures to appear natural, one of the first steps in a normal film process is to have an actor animate perform the movements, and the second step is then to build the animation around that. So in order to reconstruct an actor's movements for the 3D animation, they must first be recorded by two cameras, and being a true person working from home, my son has just arrived. So normally you have two cameras that work simultaneously, and sequences of motion really need to cover a great deal of space, in particular create an enormous amount of technical work, and so two well-positioned cameras should usually cover an entire scene. Now what that means, hold on one sec, I just got to do something. Okay, I love you too. Sorry.
I love it. My toddler's woken up and my husband is holding him in that room behind us.
My son right in front of my screen covering it going, Mom. It's your life.
Love it. It's life. It's life.
So, in a real life in animation, you have to put cameras in different places, and it can be really tricky because you don't want to see the camera in the back of the shot. You can only use a couple of cameras at the same time. So it's complicated. And one of the great things about new technology, and in this case drones, is it's sort of rendering those old practices, which are, as I mentioned, really tricky in terms of placement of cameras, how many operators you need on a site. And it's really solving that as a problem. So to think about that, with drones, in the simplest configuration, you could use two commercially available drones and a laptop. And the drones would then follow actors' moves and automatically be able to adjust their position so that the target can always be shot from 2 angles. So that then is reducing the amount of camera work, since the cameras only have to be in the spots where they're actually needed. That kind of system anticipates actors' movements in real time and calculates where drones need to fly in order to always keep the actor in frame. And then to minimise data that's been generated, you can use infrared diode markers fixed to actors' joints, so what you'd see when you're thinking about a green screen. And the drones then are equipped with a true light filter, and it only records the light from the markers, which really simplifies data processing. So the system only sees a few points from which it then determines the body's position and directional movement. And that's a really, I think, a great example in terms of how something that used to be a lot of work, quite technical, use a lot of people, expensive in terms of equipment, has been able to be simplified in terms of how we're using drones in animation. And there's so many other examples. And I think the thing for us is we know that with people like these guys, in terms of people using drones, people creating drones, that is just going to continue to evolve. And it's really only limited by the creativity of the people actually operating them. So the one thing I also want to mention, there's obviously still numerous challenges in terms of using drones, and we had this recently on Harrow. Things like high winds or rain, obviously still problems. Safety is always paramount, particularly in a production. And of course, as also mentioned, different rules in different locations, different legislation around what can be used. And that can be really tricky if you're using people with expertise and they're coming into an area where they're not familiar with those things, or they may not have a license in that particular area. And I think given the relatively short time period, really since drones have been getting used in this industry, there's a real opportunity, as I said, to use them in ways that's really only limited by our own thinking. And the other thing I just wanted to mention finally is, for me as a producer, what I'm really excited about is how we continue to develop not just drones for the air, but also use them for things like underwater work, and capturing footage that was previously inaccessible or may have caused damage if you're using a helicopter, or actual people trekking into an area may have damaged the ecology of that area. And now we're able to do those in a way that's really safe and doesn't have an impact. So for me, they're the exciting things going forward.
Thank you so much, Tracy. I feel like we could just go on for hours and hours talking about the opportunities across the industry. And I think just my final question to you, really, in terms of the industry, obviously there's been a hiatus in production following the coronavirus outbreak. Do you see that the rebound in production activity over the next, say, after about a year's time, for the next 2 or 3 or 4 years after that, that there's going to be more production happening, that there's going to be a desperate need to catch up on the things that we haven't done, and almost a revenge spend in terms of production? Is this an industry that's going to grow or shrink, is effectively my question to you.
So I don't ever think there's been so much projects in development. It's development mad right now. Like, all the money has been redirected into developing projects. And at the end of the day, I think the one thing we can all say sitting in our homes is that we're hungry for content. We're still, consuming volumes. We're going to want new things. I actually think the impact on the screen industry, not for people like me where we've been impacted immediately in terms of production shutting down, but in terms of audiences, that's coming, because that content's going to run out with shows not being made. So I think we're definitely going to go back into production. There's going to be a fight for actors. There's going to be a fight for resources. But the other thing I think that's really important for this conversation is safety is absolutely paramount. And I think we're rethinking the way we do everything. And that includes using technology. And if there's things that we can do that enable us to have less impact or smaller amounts of people, things that enable, things to be shot that maybe we did it one way before, and there's a different way to do it that creates less impact or contact with people themselves, then that's what we're going to be doing. And I think, as that volume ramps up, there's going to be a real hunger for more people in this space.
And just finally, I gathered that a few years ago, the technical Oscars suddenly started having a drone aspect to it. Are there particular awards from the Academy around drone cinematography now? Is that something that's becoming a thing?
Oh, I don't know, but this absolutely should be an area, that is recognised. I've got to say, like, as I said, I saw it in 2014 on Pirates, where it was really, the directors got it very quickly, and the studio was probably a bit more nervous at that point about this sort of use of technology. And as soon as they could see how it could be utilised on a set, it was a game changer. And that's just evolved. It's one of those things, like, it was such a big thing. It was new. Now we can't imagine doing a production without it, no matter what the budget. I think the difference is the quality of probably the drone, whether it's been custom made for your production or whether it's one that's, off the shelf that you can get at any store. I think it's been used in every capacity. I mean, even there's a production in the US that's happening with the Australian operators, and it's a production that's using film as opposed to digital content. Now they've created a drone that's able to carry a camera that, that's a significant weight that their drone's having to carry, so that they can actually do film because of the way that the director wanted to work. So it's interesting in many ways. That's new meet old, and putting those things together. But I think that more and more ways that people can creatively come up with solutions. And as I said, underwater is a real thing that we haven't done a lot with, but I think there's real scope there around, and that underwater drones exist, but what else is there? I'm sure there's plenty of things that'll help us solve issues.
Yep. Brilliant. Okay, I'm conscious of time. We've got a lot of questions. So I'm thinking if we unmute ourselves, we'll try and do this in like a quick flash Q&A. And if we don't manage to get through things, I'm sure we can write some things up to go with this as well. I did have a question around drones on construction site management. I feel like, Jen, you and I need to do a construction site management drone webinar separate to this maybe. But very quickly, are you seeing drones being used more on construction sites now? And what are the top 3 things that they would be used for on a construction site? Would you say?
A lot more. And actually it's quite interesting that what you were just saying there, Tracy, is that, it's used to solve a specific problem. I think one of the things, if you can identify a problem and then apply drone logic to that, that's a really creative way of doing it, rather than saying, I've got this drone, what am I going to do with it? Like, think about the problems that exist and then solve it with the drone. And on construction sites, that's really interesting. So compliance is a big deal on construction sites, and figuring out if the pylons are in precisely the right location that they should be. So mapping the actual construction versus what the plans say it should be. Obviously, a time lapse, in terms of regularly capturing construction. So you can set a drone to fly a program once every 2 days or once a month or whatever, just to show a lapse of time from start to finish. And also, actually, on construction sites, you see lots of construction workers with their own drones, just flying it near the crane, doing stuff that's maybe not legitimate, but, you do see a lot more drones that individuals own flying around in all kinds of locations now. And I think that as a video producer, I see one and I go, oh, great, can I get access to that footage as well? So, being aware that other people are using them as well on construction sites and things like that too. But there's so many uses, there's so many engineering uses. I'm not an engineer, so I can't give you specific advice on that, but so many engineers are using them for, mapping water management, water flows through a site, understanding how, traffic moves around a site, all that kind of stuff.
Fantastic. Okay, moving on. Oh, this is quite general. How does somebody shift into the drone industry now after the pandemic? I think I'd probably start with you need to get qualified and you need to get experience. And I don't know if anyone else wants to add onto that. But there's going to be opportunities, and it's just a matter of finding them, and networking like this is obviously one thing, and getting involved with the Congress is probably something I would say is probably worth everybody's time. But does anybody else have any ideas initially on how people can get into the drone industry quickly as we come out of our shutdown and start trying to get past COVID?
Yeah, I mean, like you say, just get a drone, learn how it works, get flying, get qualified. I mean, sometimes the get qualified comes before you start learning to fly a drone, because it depends on what country you're in and where you can fly. So here I'm really lucky. I've got lots of farmland that I can go to fly in, but find out the law in the area that you live. And then, like Jen said, you can buy a really cheap drone off, eBay and Gumtree, but, you've got to be careful that you're buying something. So it might be approaching somebody that's already doing it and saying, do you have an old drone that you're selling that somebody that's already doing it that is perhaps flying? Because if you buy a cheap one, you might find something that's dangerous that's been flown and it's not So it's always that balance.
Don't ever buy gear off a secondhand gear off a photographer. We've punished it.
You've dropped it out the sky.
Don't ever do that. It's been on a mine site somewhere. Don't do that.
Quick Australian context is you can actually operate commercially under 2 kgs without any prior licensing required. There are rules that you have to follow with CASA, and you can find out more about that in Australia on casa.gov.au, or drop myself or Jenna a message, and I'm sure that we'd be happy to give you a bit of background on there. Tracy, what do you look for when you hire drone pilots? Are these your camera people that have actually trained up with drones, or are they actually drone pilots that are then coming in and trying to be camera people?
Oh, they're both, actually. I think that people are coming at it from all different directions at this point. They're people, we've had camera people who've been in the industry who have gone and got their license, have seen that there's an opportunity in the industry to come in through that pathway, that there's a need for it. That tends to be where I've seen most people come from. But, sorry, 9-year-old back again.
Perfect timing every time.
Perfect timing.
So anyway, people come in through a variety of things. I think the most important thing for us is safety on set is paramount. So we're looking for people who are licensed, who understand absolutely safety is first and foremost every consideration in terms of production.
Elena, obviously you've worked with a number of influencers as well as production houses. So are you finding that more people now who are social media influencers, for example, are using drones to get better shots, to get things that are more clickable, more likable, or tell a story in a different way? Are you seeing an increase in that market?
Yeah, definitely. I think we have our Facebook group, and we have a lot of women who are joining our Facebook group on a weekly basis, and a lot are beginners who had just purchased a drone so they can add to their content. So I think, like, you know, a lot of us are, well, nobody's traveling right now, but when we were traveling and we have these content creators out there producing a lot of videos and photos, they are looking for new ways to capture the spaces that they're in. And so as a result, as one of you mentioned, it's much easier to get a drone, and one that works really well for a reasonable price nowadays. So I definitely think content creators are turning to drones for just a new perspective in their content, for sure.
Just back to Tracy there again now, in terms of content being produced, everyone's interested in lives. And I remember the drone that carried the camera with the film on it, I think weighing about 80 kilos. I was thinking, well, if I dropped a few kilos, that could carry me somewhere. But a lot of people now are looking at this idea of, 360 live cameras being used to record events live, actually being put onto drones. Is this something you're seeing more now in the production world, this idea of live production using drone technology?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, this is something that's been evolving over time. I remember when we first started doing VR, that it was for, people who'd been producing content for, I guess, normal television, regular television. It was such a difficult thing to navigate how you think of doing a full 360 environment and not be in it. Like, how do you, because we're so used to standing on one side and you film the other direction. And so it was a really difficult thing to navigate. And of course, drones in terms of this space actually completely solved that as an issue. And we've got more and more content, particularly in the documentary space, in terms of 360 content, because it's, you've got a lot more empathy in terms of documentary and impact and being able to be immersed in a world. And I think that, we're seeing more and more of it. I think that there's a real lack of people that have skills in terms of delivering that at the moment. So that is certainly a growth area that, we're looking for people who have that expertise.
Karis, well, I'm going to throw at you to start with, but I think both Jen and Elena can add some value to this. So how do you combine, it's not a linear process for a lot of people, how do you combine drone and filmmaking experience to then take the next step? What would be the things that you would say to people? Okay, they may have some basic drone skills, they may have got some editing skills. What's the kind of thing, do they need to start producing things themselves? I mean, you mentioned their show reel.
Yeah.
So what would be your advice?
Yeah, so you would basically go and get a variety of shots of different areas, but also thinking about the different shots and putting them together so there's a little bit of a flow, and then start knocking on some doors. You know, they might be virtual doors, and it might be, you know, somebody who's already doing it and is very successful and saying, look, you know, I've got these skills, and then, you know, they may say, you know, come down, fly a drone with me or whatever. But yeah, have a show reel, and then basically, you know, your contacts, if you've got them already in the industry, start like saying to them, hey, I'm a drone pilot. See, what was interesting for me was to say that I qualified, I was, you know, I knew that I had to get good quick, and I felt like I had a fairly good show reel, but I had to knock on an awful lot of doors, and it took about 12 months. And I've got contacts in the industry, and what happens is people do tend to use the same person because they know that that person is going to deliver. And once you build that relationship, I would just say be tenacious and keep going. You know, once you've got your little show reel and you're qualified and you've got your drone, just be tenacious and keep saying, I'm here, I can fly a drone, I'd love to fly a drone. And then you will find occasionally it will work in your favour to be a woman, and sometimes it just doesn't. So, you know, it's just keep going.
Elena, are you obviously doing everything from, you know, your own hands in the shot there with the cooking programs and things like that. So you've been literally hands-on in your production career. What tips or tricks would you say for people that may have a bit of drone experience, have a show reel, are interested in production? How do you combine all of that to get noticed in a US context?
Yeah, so I think, you know, Chris, you said a lot of the things. Definitely networking. Joining our community. I think there's when you join different communities of, you know, people who are already flying, there might be jobs that pop up that are not necessarily in their location, and so we're looking for people who can do it in that location. I know a lot of people reach out to Women Who Drone, just looking for pilots in different locations, and I will always reach out to the community to offer those opportunities. So as much networking is always going to be in your favor when you're trying to join any industry or you're trying to get your work in front of people. Yeah, so the show reel is very key. Once you have something to show, and I even tell this to my little sister who's like starting off with graphic design, and even when I started off in video production, if you have something to show people of, you know, what your skill set looks like and what you can do, that's always going to be the one thing that opens up that conversation or that door to some sort of opportunity.
Yeah, Women Who Drone, you have like a jobs board / opportunity board going on there as well, don't you? I think that's key, actually. Posting the opportunities, yeah, and knowing where to look from. So womenwhodrone.co is the place to go to for that one.
Or on the T-shirt. I noticed you've got the T-shirt on there.
Yes, I know. I don't have a T-shirt. We should have all been wearing them today.
I've got it.
I know. I need to send some out to you all.
Yes, we could have been on brand, 100%.
I know.
Jen, tell us more about how you found that crossover from photography into drone photography, but also somebody's asked here around about what editing programs everybody uses. So if there's particular editing software that could be recommended, we'll go around the group again as well.
I think there are two things that you can do. I think networking, obviously everyone's covered, so I won't cover that again, but I think the thing that I did, I get this question a lot, how do I get into photography or video production or any industry? Like, that's a really common question to get into any industry. I think in terms of media and production is obviously not the only thing that you're interested in. You're also interested in surfing or cooking or, you know, meal planning or art or whatever your other interest is in life. Combine that with your drone photography if you can. Figure out a way to do it so that you tell a really interesting story and make that your show reel. I think there are hundreds of show reels out there where people are like, here's a shot over the ocean and here's a shot over some farmland and here's a shot over some corn, whatever. We've all seen it 100 times before. Tell a story and you'll absolutely get people's interest. So if you can figure out a way to get your show reel to tell a story, you will be at the top of the game. You'll be so far ahead of everyone else who's put a show reel together. I can't tell you. Every time I see a show reel, I'm like, oh, great, it's a collection of dudes at the beach. Awesome. You know, but you tell me a story and I'm really engaged. So tell a story and figure out what else you're passionate about and see if you can combine the two. So my background is forensic science and firefighting. So it was a natural fit for me to go into, heavy industry because I was spent, a long time around fire trucks. So it was really natural for me to go into something which was, heavy industry related. So figure out what else you're good at or what else you've done in the past and merge it exactly as Elena has done. She's built a whole career out of figuring out how to be behind and in front of the camera, and now she does it with drones. So it's not like drones is the whole thing. It's like I did all the stuff and now I've attached drones to the end of it. So That would be my advice. And editing software, I mean, if you're a beginner, you need to start using the advanced programs if you want to get ahead. So forget the beginner programs, just go straight to Premiere Pro or whatever. I'm a PC user, so I use Premiere Pro. So just forget the beginner programs. You're going to waste your time.
Same, Premiere Pro.
Same, Premiere Pro.
Yeah, Premiere Pro, but then I've, Final Cut X or 10. And then also, if you're starting out, Resolve is free, and then there's Avid, that's free.
Yeah,
so they're all very much the same. You just got to get into where is that button that does that in each program.
Yep, nice one. Okay. Conscious of the time, I think we'll do a couple more. So let me have a look here. Tracy, how many opportunities are you seeing when we're talking about drone boards like Elena has there, in terms of finding opportunities? How many job boards or places are there for people who'd be looking for opportunities, in the production industry? Where do people typically look for those kinds of jobs?
Great question. I don't know. We tend to go through crewing agencies, or we look for word of mouth from other people about companies that are doing really interesting things. One of the key things for us is where, we actually will support attachments. So, for example, if you are someone who's wanting to be a drone camera operator, we may support, particularly women or people from diverse backgrounds, we may support you being attached to the unit that we're using. And by attached, I mean it's a paid 6-week training process. And what's important for us is we want to see more women in this space. So that is certainly something that we support, and we would do that in conjunction with the screen agency.
Sign me up.
Same. Where do I sign?
Where do we sign up?
Can we see your cat? Can we have a look at your cat?
Oh, so gorgeous.
Want some cat content? Oh, hello.
Beautiful. Oh. So chilled. I would show you my children, but they're not that chilled. Talking of children. Thank you for staying up for us, Elena. I know the time zones. To try and get the UK and the US in is really quite hard, but I wanted you both on here, and I'm really glad. And I suppose the final question here is people are asking about schools, and so how schools can actually get involved in drone training, and how maybe there's a link here between schools working with the media or talking to the media and finding ways in which we can actually find people to go into schools, or who would be a good person to go into a school to tell kids about what they could use with drones for in the production world. Who wants to take that one?
Yeah, I can start just because we've been working with schools in New York. So we are actually approved by the New York Department of Education to implement drone curriculum in the schools. And before COVID-19 times, we were going to schools and we were just holding workshops to introduce drone technology. Many of the schools were girls' schools, and I actually was introduced to, I guess, getting into schools is, again, back to the networking and reaching out to the schools, because I was introduced to a principal from a high school who then was able to make the introduction to getting us approved by the Department of Education in order to start implementing that drone curriculum. But another route that I also went through was Girls Inc., which is an organization and after-school program that is associated with a number of schools across New York City and across the nation. So I think, we have obviously a focus on girls and women, but generally speaking, if there are organizations that are already within the schools, whether they're after school programs, could be Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, and they have a relationship with the schools, a good introduction could be pitching those organizations who already have the relationship with the schools, because it's always not so easy to get through to a principal or to the school system. So that would be my recommendation to tapping into drone curriculum.
Yes, and of course, Girls Who Drone is the next gen of Women Who Drone.
Yes,
looking
absolutely.
forward to seeing
we have
more
our
of
website that's more focused on the girls and the girls' schools. And just to sort of add a little bit to that, it's always great to just network with educators, because we have educators that'll reach out to us asking for drone curriculum or asking how can we get some of this into the schools. So there's teachers out there that are very interested. So it's also worth just reaching out to actual educators.
Elena, is your program just American at the moment, or is it worldwide?
So not the drone curriculum is specific to New York right now, but as far as our community, it's global.
Okay, but in terms of the education, is your curriculum specific to New York because of the environment that you're operating in, or is it more just because it's the only place that it's landed so far?
The curriculum is specific to U.S. laws, so it could be used in all of the U.S.
Cool.
And I'm sure we could get that mapped to Australia as well, Jen, pretty easily.
Well, that was my question, because I'm wondering if there are other people in other countries who are looking for ways to just pick that content up and make it applicable to their own, it would be relatively easy or easier for them to do that and just replace the legislative framework with their own. But the content, largely around flying and et cetera is the same.
Yeah, basically
somebody like you, Jen.
Legislation, yeah.
Someone like you, Jen, can help us with that. Are you there? Signed up? Got a volunteer, Elaine. Yeah. Get Karis to do the British stuff. You can do the Australian stuff. Yes. Top notch. I think we'll move on now because we're running over. So I think what we'll probably just do is a very quick last point from everybody. We'll start with you, Tracy. What would you say to young women and girls who are considering becoming drone operators? What are the benefits and what opportunities could it open up for young girls and also women who may be wanting to transit out of their current career in terms of opportunities in the world of media?
You know what? We definitely need more women in this space. And I say that not just because I'm like, go girls. I say that because I think women are much more creative thinkers. It's very generalized, but I do think that we are problem solvers, mostly by nature, and think really differently. And one of the really important things, as I said, for us as a production company is we need to solve problems. So we want people that come at it from different perspectives. And so having diversity in a range of people, so female and male and anybody else, we want to see you in the industry as operators. So I would really encourage people to look at ways to get trained, find avenues. There are free courses that get run. As I mentioned, screen agencies, not often, but irregularly have had courses to bring people in to learn about operating drones. So there are pathways, look out for them, do your Google searching, go through wonderful places like Women in Drones or Girls in Drones. And, if you really want to do this, there's avenues to get in here, and we definitely are looking for people who want to come in.
Brilliant, Tracy. Thank you. Elena, mate, before you go to bed, because I know it's very late where you are, what kind of opportunities are you seeing this open up for women and girls in the US, getting their hands on a drone?
Yeah, so, from my experience of just going into the classrooms and showing girls a drone and walking in with it, the first look on their face is confusion, and they're like, what is this? Oh, what are we about to talk about? I think the biggest thing, especially for young girls, is to really get inspired and watch the stories of other women who are actually using drone technology. I mean, this is obviously what we're doing right now is a great opportunity to get inspired and learn from women who are already using drone technology. But that is a huge reason why we create the pilot spotlights on our YouTube channel, is to showcase the stories of real women who are using this technology for whatever purpose. Could be creative, it could be technical, or a different use case. But it gives them sort of the inspiration, but also the vision of what they might want to do with that technology. So I think, for me, it's always about how do you get inspired to do something, and who are those people that really inspire you to actually go pick up that drone. For us, when we've taught the girls, we show up with the drone, they have nothing, they don't want anything to do with it. Then we show them the pilot spotlights, and after that, all of them want to fly the drone. So I feel like inspiration is key.
Couldn't agree more. We'll probably end with Karis, so we'll throw this to Jen. Jen, you and I sit here in Australia, and we were about 5-6 years ago, fewer than 1% females across the drone industry. I have seen that number creeping up a bit, but what do you think we actually need to do now in terms of inspiring, getting more women to maybe move careers or change careers, or recognise, women that work in the media? I feel there's going to be further conversations happening here with socially distanced coffee walks in Kangaroo Point around Brisbane. But what can we do, and what do you see working?
Of all of my clients and all of my contacts and associates, there are two industries that haven't slowed down, and they are defence and drones. Anyone who's doing anything with a drone cannot even take a call at the moment. They're so busy, and anyone who's doing anything with defence is so busy it's not even funny. So I think that the three things that I would say is pick an industry that is growing and try and attach yourself to that. Tell a story, tell a story, tell a story, tell a story, tell a story. I'll say it over and over again, tell a story. It's really, really important. And all of the media and content marketing that you see is all people drumming on about how you need to tell a story to engage your audience. So that would be my second piece of advice. And the third piece of advice is network. You just have to have a good network. All of my great opportunities in my business, across my whole business and across my whole life, have come from networking. So I think you just shouldn't be afraid to take a risk to reach out to someone and say, hey, I'm new, I need help. Can you recommend something for me? And even if they can't help you, I think everyone on this panel would be more than happy to help you. So if you reach out, we will always help you.
Yes, and you can reach out to us by emailing hello@worldofdroneseducation.com, and we can make sure the messages get across to our panelists. So, Caris, sitting there from the British perspective, obviously having worked inside many different production houses like the BBC and Channel 5 and various other things across the UK, how many women are you seeing coming through, and is it increasing? And what can we sort of recommend some of these women who might be interested in moving from traditional media production into drone-based production?
Yeah, it's definitely starting to increase, which is great. And the thing is, and we, in the UK, we have like just a little Facebook group that we message, basically, like Elena said, about jobs, sharing jobs and sharing our law thing. But from an inspiration perspective, it is women who drone. But yeah, To make that move is, really important, because the more we show up, it's like me, I'm a TV camera operator, but mostly it's TV camera men, and everyone goes, oh, the cameraman's come in, or so what's really good about being a drone pilot is it's gender neutral. And really what I would say is that it's still completely wide open. And off the back of a couple of years ago, I dipped my toe into drone mapping and drone inspections. And as production is going to be a bit slow, we reckon, in the UK for at least 6 to 8 months, our drone industry is not as advanced as Australia, and we really need to look at what is happening there. And then in some cases, our law is not as flexible as it is in the US. So, there's a real possibility that growth is going to, as we look back in the pandemic, we go, right, okay, it's going to be more about, like Tracy said, drone operators could be used a little bit more in production, because social distancing is really easy with a drone. And so, there's that. I'm yet to hear my phone start going crazy yet, but we're not really out of lockdown yet. And the other thing that I was going to say is that, the drones can be in places that we can't get. So we're just waiting for that industry to, and I think, as Tracy said, drones, we need, every production loves a drone shot now. So, skill up and find out, if you're not in production already, get some work experience, because anybody will let you on set. It's going to be difficult. Don't think that now we're in this really weird point where everything's changing. There are going to be opportunities, but you're going to have to knock on the door, and you're really going to have to be tenacious. That's my final thing, really.
Don't forget too, you're probably more across this, Tracy, than anyone else, but in Queensland and in Australia, there are diversity targets for productions now. So quite often those producers have to have a certain number of women or disability or whatever the whatever the production target is, they have to have these more and more. So start looking into those things and really taking advantage of that.
Yeah, I might flick that one back to Elena and to Caris as well, in terms of the US and the UK perspective. Elena, are you seeing that production, obviously there's not that much publicly funded production in the US compared to places like the UK and Australia, where we have a lot of taxpayer funded production, like the ABC, the Australian Broadcasting Corporation version of the ABC here. Are you seeing gender diversity targets coming in across the US at all on productions?
Well, I mean, you mean just generally or with drones? Okay.
Just generally, yeah.
I would, because I was going to say with drones, not so much. But I mean, I have a number of friends that are, work for TV companies. And I mean, even when I was working for a TV company, there's always a majority of men in the offices, just like a lot of shooters and editors. I feel like most of the time you see a lot of women on camera as talent. But, at times there are women doing other jobs too, but I would say it's definitely skews male. I haven't been in working for a TV studio for a while. So I know that has changed just because one of my best friends works at a TV company, but I visited her TV station once and still there's a lot of men there.
I'm actually just going to jump to Tracy too, because Tracy Hoodlum you've got your lots on the Disney park as well. So Elena, I mean, Tracy comes to California a few times a year because Hoodlum have their US based lots. So I'm just seeing Tracy going like this. And I'm thinking, what have you experienced with gender targets across the production world there in Hollywood?
So it's not universal, but certainly there has been a real shift around diversity and inclusion in the screen industry. I would say worldwide, but certainly we have a first look deal with ABC Studios in the US. So we sit on the Disney lot and we work with the Disney family of companies, and they are very forward thinking around diversity and inclusion. And even even from genesis of projects, there's real momentum, there's real targets. And so we are definitely seeing a shift. And, I think that, it's long overdue, but I think, it's just going to become more and more important because when we're looking at content more and more, we want to find stuff that reflects our lives or reflects things that resonate with us. And for too long, I think that half the population have had less of that than the other half. I always say that, we don't call the superhero movies that are full of men, men flicks, but if it's got that many women in it, it's a chick flick. So I think, we need to change that. And it's great to be working with a studio in the US who is really dynamic in that space and are really leading in making that change.
And then final word goes to you, Karis. Are you seeing gender targets in any of the production companies that you're working with?
Yeah, so there is this thing called Project Diamond, and that's across the board, and it's not just gender, and it's basically to encourage, just a less formulaic kind of crew, so that it is looking at that. So, use it to your advantage and just, as I say, knock on doors and get work experience. I mean, often I get asked, can people come on shoots with me? But because I'm an individual freelancer, it's always difficult. So go to the production company or go to the broadcaster, and there will be, a careers development element. And Tracy mentioned the screen agencies. We have them in the UK regionally. You've got your North, you've got your Screen Yorkshire, you've got your, and it's all about production outside of London, and you will get lots of opportunities.
Okay, we're over time. So, I mean, we haven't lost any of our viewers either, which is fantastic. So, this video will be recorded, edited, and made available on the World of Drones Education YouTube channel. I'm sure that the conversation will continue, and I feel like we could have kept going. So I feel like we should probably all get together and have this kind of conversation again in a few months' time and see how the industry is going. If anyone who's watching this has any burning questions, please do feel free to email us at hello@worldofdroneseducation.com and tell us what kind of content you want to see, who you want to hear from, and kind of questions that you'd like to have answered. Just in the meanwhile, please go and find Elena's womenwhodrone.co. Have a look at some of the Hoodlum productions. Check out the Drone Lass. And don't forget our Jen industrial photo and video. But Jen is just hilarious on Instagram anyway. Makes just the most hilarious.
Jen.Dana. You'll find me anywhere, Jen.Dana.
What's your Instagram channel, Jen?
Oh, I don't know.
We'll put all of
Jen.
this
Dana. It's just at Jen.Dana.
We'll find it. Jen's videos that she started producing at the start of the coronavirus issue were just toilet roll centric hilarity is what I'm going to put down there. They were very well made. They should be a show reel in themselves. Toilet roll related coronavirus show reels are going to start happening, right? Well, thank you so much for everybody's time today, and look forward to speaking to you all again. So thanks.
Bye.
Thanks everyone.
Bye.